My husband has a group of friends on Facebook Messenger called Husband Survival Manual. I joined it by accident, and I saw things I'll never be able to forget. I never meant to snoop. Honestly, I didn't even know you could accidentally join a group chat on Facebook Messenger, but somehow one wrong tap while I was trying to share a photo with my sister led me straight into it. Husband Survival Manual. That was the name of the group. I thought it was a joke at first. Some silly thing where guys shared memes about burnt toast and pretending not to hear their wives ask them to do the dishes. But the moment I opened it, I felt something twist in my stomach. The last message was from Oliver, my husband, my Oliver. He had written, "If she ever finds out, I'm done. I'll lose everything." That line sat there like a bomb, and my finger hovered over the screen, heart pounding, as if just touching it would set the whole thing off. I wish I had closed the app right then. I wish I had just walked away, but I didn't. I scrolled. There were 6 men in the group, all married, all living within an hour of each other. Oliver, his old university friend Eric, 2 of his colleagues, Victor and Rasmus, and 2 I didn't know, Henrik and Andreas. Their profile pictures all looked so normal. Dads at birthday parties, men in suits holding champagne glasses, boys' night photos from ski trips in Innsbruck or Bergen, but what they shared in that group was anything but normal. I saw screenshots of texts from their wives, and then side-by-side comparisons of how they translated those texts in the group, mocking them, twisting innocent messages into punchlines. I saw polls about who could lie the best without getting caught. I saw challenges, yes, actual challenges, where they dare each other to plant seeds of self-doubt in their wives' minds. One even called it gaslight bingo. At first, it was like reading about strangers. My brain refused to associate any of it with Oliver. This wasn't my husband. He brought me tea in the mornings. He helped my mother with her taxes. He held me when I cried over stupid things like dead birds and rainy vacations. But then I found the folder. They had a shared Google Drive folder, password protected, of course, but I saw the message. Updated the doc. October expenses. Pua's Camilla's weak spot list. Camilla. Me. My full name. I didn't even remember opening it. My fingers moved on autopilot. And yes, he used our cat's name as the password. Just one more detail that made me want to vomit. There were 3 documents with my name, each one more horrifying than the last. One was a list of triggers, times I had cried, gotten upset, been silent at dinner, or raised my voice. Beside each, there was an analysis, likely linked to insecurity around aging, possibly suspicious about my time in Berlin. Avoid mentioning her sister. Another was a spreadsheet of our finances, not unusual, until I noticed a second column, marked real, in red. He had 2 budgets. One he showed me, and another one, the real one, with hidden investments and a mysterious monthly cash withdrawal I never knew about. But the third document, that one broke me. It was titled Contingency Plan. It had paragraphs, outlines, notes, like something out of a thriller novel. If Camilla finds out, stage emotional breakdown. Blame burnout and shame. Suggest therapy as a couple, then isolate. If she tries to leave, delay legal process. Hide finances until Q1. Use Henrik's lawyer. He's discreet. If she threatens to go public, bring up her emotional instability. Mention past breakdown in Spain. She'll be too ashamed to argue. Say, this is a private matter in public responses. I sat there in silence for I don't know how long. At some point, the cat jumped on my lap and meowed, and I realized I had been crying without noticing, not weeping, just leaking. Slow, unstoppable tears that ran down my cheeks and soaked into my collar. I didn't confront him that night, or the next. I watched him. Every move, every word, every smile. It was like living with a stranger wearing my husband's face. But the worst part? He still kissed me goodnight. For the next 3 days, I rehearsed everything I wanted to say to him. In the shower, while folding laundry, even in my sleep. But the moment I saw him walk through the front door, all charm and cologne, I went blank. Because how do you confront someone who has a script ready for when you find out? Oliver wasn't just prepared for discovery, he had rehearsed it. And worse, so had his friends. I couldn't just accuse him. I couldn't yell or cry or pack a bag. That's exactly what he expected. I had to be smarter, colder. I had to act like nothing had changed, while everything inside me was collapsing. So I played my role. I asked about his day. I made risotto. I smiled when he brought me flowers. Lilies, the same ones he gave me when we first moved to Copenhagen, except this time, I looked at them and saw a funeral bouquet. That night, I couldn't sleep. I got out of bed around 3 a.m. and stood in the kitchen, staring at the fridge like it held the answers. And then I remembered something. Something buried in the back of my mind. 2 months ago, Oliver had gone to Berlin for work. It was supposed to be a 3-day strategy workshop. He sent me pictures from a conference center, voice notes about boring meetings, and even a blurry video of a rooftop dinner with clients. But there was something that never made sense. He didn't bring back any receipts. No hotel invoice. No small souvenirs like he usually did. Just a cheap bottle of wine and a vague story about running into an old friend from university. Someone he didn't name. I went back to the folder. Buried in one of the shared documents, I found a message from Henrik that chilled me. Berlin went smoothly. Tell your girl it was business. Just don't use the same pics again next time. Next time. There was a next time planned. I couldn't breathe. I thought I had hit rock bottom when I found the contingency plan. But this was worse. This was betrayal in real time. I started collecting evidence. Screenshots, downloads, backups. I sent everything to an encrypted folder only I could access. I bought a second phone and started documenting every conversation, every lie, every little twitch in his face when he spoke. But the hardest part was pretending. Pretending to laugh when he made jokes. Pretending to care when he talked about work. Pretending to fall asleep beside him when my mind was racing with escape plans. And then came the dinner. He invited friends over. Victor and his wife, Lisette. I used to love Lisette. But now, all I saw was someone who might know. Someone who might smile politely, while knowing every disgusting thing our husbands joked about behind closed doors. Halfway through dessert, Victor said something that made my blood run cold. Oliver, remember that trip to Bergen? What did we call it? The husband retreat? He laughed and nudged Lisette. Don't worry, nothing shady. Just a bit of male bonding, right? Oliver laughed too loud. Lisette just smiled, but her eyes darted toward me, and that's when I knew. She knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to stay quiet. Enough to protect her lifestyle. Enough to pretend. After they left, I asked Oliver a simple question. Do you think you're a good husband? He looked surprised, then smiled. I try my best. Why? I shrugged. Just curious. He kissed my forehead like I was a child, and I had to force myself not to flinch. That night, while he slept, I read every message in that group chat again, and then I found it. The picture, a grainy photo, clearly taken from a distance, through a restaurant window. It was me, sitting alone, waiting for someone. A timestamp in the corner. March 14th. I remembered that day. I had lunch with an old colleague from university, Felix, who had just moved back to town. We talked about his new job, about life, about nothing really. Someone had followed me, photographed me, sent it to the group. Oliver's message beneath the photo made my stomach turn. Don't worry, boys. I've got eyes on her too. That photo was the final crack. Not just because it meant Oliver was spying on me, but because it confirmed something far worse. He didn't trust me either. All this time, while I worried about how to confront him, he was watching me, planning, monitoring, as if I was the threat. I wasn't the wife in denial anymore. I was a target. The next morning, I called Felix. I tried to sound casual, like I just wanted to catch up. He didn't suspect anything. Just asked if I was okay, said I sounded off. I told him I was fine, that I might need his help soon, but I couldn't explain yet. He didn't ask questions. That's what I always liked about Felix. He respected silence. By the end of that week, I had found a lawyer. Not Henrik's, obviously. Mine was discreet. A woman named Madeleine Gosselin, based in Lyon, recommended by a former client who owed me a favor. I didn't even contact her from my home Wi-Fi. I waited until I was in a cafe across town, paid in cash, and used a temporary email. Madeleine didn't ask for details in writing. We spoke once, voice only, over an encrypted call. I told her I needed information, mostly about financial separation, digital surveillance, and offshore accounts. Her first question surprised me. Is he violent? I froze. No, I said slowly. Just manipulative. Calculating. She was quiet for a moment. Then be more dangerous than he is, but quieter. I almost cried when she said that, because for the first time in weeks, someone believed me. Without proof, without judgment, without offering a cliché about communication or therapy, or trying to rebuild trust. Madeleine sent me a checklist. Things I had never thought about. Backup copies of passports, scans of joint property deeds, insurance policies, accounts in my name, things that could vanish if he decided to play dirty, and he would play dirty. That much was clear now. But I couldn't just leave. Not yet. Because the more I read through those group chats, the clearer it became. These men weren't just venting. They were building something, a system. A brotherhood of manipulation, where every weakness of their wives was documented, analyzed, and weaponized. If I disappeared quietly, he'd spin it as proof of my instability. He had already laid the groundwork. And worse, I'd be leaving them untouched. Free to do this again, to someone else. I had to burn it down, not just for me. So I went back into the group chat and changed nothing. I left it exactly as I found it. Let them keep posting. Let them stay comfortable. I wanted every message, every file, every joke. But I started collecting names. Lisette, she was part of it, knowingly or not. And if she was, maybe others were too. I found traces of another woman, Annalena, married to Rasmus. There were old messages mocking her therapy sessions, details about her medication, even a PDF of her medical records. That had to be illegal. But there it was, shared like a funny meme. I searched for her online. It took me a while, but I found her Instagram. Mostly yoga poses and mountain views, nothing personal, except one video, saved in her highlights, where she said something that haunted me. Healing is hard when the person hurting you keeps smiling. I saved it. And that night, after Oliver fell asleep beside me, I opened a blank file on my second phone and wrote the first line of what would become my own version of survival. If you're reading this, it's because your husband has a secret manual about how to break you. I didn't know what the endgame was yet. I just knew I needed one. The file I started that night wasn't meant for me. It was meant for whoever came next. Whoever might need proof that these men existed, that what they were doing wasn't banter or private jokes. I kept it hidden in plain sight, disguised as a note app full of recipes. Spinach tart, bolognese, lemon cake. Each recipe was a page of evidence written in coded form. Every ingredient was a date, every measurement a file reference. It was almost poetic. They'd mocked me for keeping grocery lists, and now those lists would ruin them. But to make it believable, I had to keep acting. Oliver started noticing the calmness in me, the quietness. "You're different lately," he said one morning, pouring coffee. "Less anxious." I smiled. Maybe I'm finally learning how to survive marriage. He laughed, assuming it was a joke. I didn't correct him. During those weeks, I learned more about him than in 7 years of marriage. His routines, his passwords, the way his expression changed when he lied. I memorized every twitch, every micro-hesitation. The man I thought I loved had become a living case study. And then, one evening, I caught him doing something that made everything real again. He was in the living room, headphones on, staring at his laptop. When I passed behind him, I saw the reflection of his screen in the window. Messenger. The group chat. He didn't even bother to hide it anymore. But the message at the top wasn't from him. It was from Eric. "We might have a problem. Annalena's gone." Oliver typed back quickly. "Gone where?" "Left. Packed up. No note. Rasmus is losing it." I walked back to the kitchen before he could notice I'd seen anything. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped a plate. Gone. Had she found out? Had she tried to fight back? Or had she just escaped before they could destroy her completely? That night, I checked her social media again. Everything was gone. Instagram, Facebook, even her yoga website vanished. I should have felt relieved for her, but instead, I felt sick. Because if she disappeared without warning, and these men already had a contingency plan for me, then maybe leaving wasn't safety at all. Maybe it was part of the game. The next morning, Oliver told me he'd be working late. I told him fine, kissed him goodbye, and watched his car disappear down the street. Then I grabbed my coat and went to see Lisette. She didn't expect me. I could see the flicker of panic in her eyes when she opened the door. Her house smelled of lemon cleaner and tension. "Camilla, what a surprise!" I didn't bother with small talk. "Did you know about the group?" I asked quietly. Her smile faltered. "What group? The Husband Survival Manual?" Silence, then a sigh. She stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, she poured 2 glasses of white wine without asking. The clock ticked loudly. When she finally spoke, her voice was tired. "I told Victor it would end badly," she said. "But he said it was harmless. Said it was just men being men." "Harmless?" I snapped. "They share private information about us. They follow us. They plan lies." Lisette's hand trembled as she set down her glass. "You think I don't know? Do you think I haven't read what he wrote about me?" She opened her phone and scrolled. For a moment, she looked older, fragile. They said I was easy to control if you cry first, that I'd stay no matter what. We sat there in silence, two strangers linked by humiliation. When I finally spoke again, my voice was steady. They've built a system. We can't just run from it. Lisette looked up. Then what do you want to do? I didn't have a full plan yet, but the outline was clear in my head. I want to make them read their own manual. Lisette stared at me for a long time. No words, just a quiet, almost frightened recognition in her eyes. Then slowly, she nodded. I'll help you, she whispered. But not for you. For me, that was good enough. We spent the next 2 hours sitting at her dining table like war generals, phones between us, scrolling, copying, remembering. She showed me things I hadn't seen before. Screenshots Victor had carelessly left on their shared tablet. A second phone she once found hidden in his gym bag. There was even a voice memo. A drunken recording from a weekend in Bergen. I recognized Oliver's voice instantly. She's too emotional to ever be taken seriously. That's the beauty of it. If she ever talks, people will just assume she's having another episode. I didn't cry. Not this time. I asked Lisette why she never said anything, why she didn't leave. She looked at her hands. Because they don't just trap you with love, they trap you with reputation. That's when I realized what I needed most. I didn't want revenge. I wanted credibility. I wanted people to believe me the moment I opened my mouth, not ask questions, not second-guess my version. I needed my story so airtight, so undeniable, that no man could twist it into hysteria or paranoia. So I built a plan around that. Around truth. Undeniable, traceable truth. It started small. Anonymous posts on forums under fake names, soft disclosures about a group of men with a system. Nothing detailed, just enough to bait the hook. Then came the accounts. Private Instagram and Twitter pages under the name The Manual Exposed. I started uploading redacted screenshots, voice snippets, subtle indicators. Not too much, just enough to spark suspicion. Within days, women began following. Some commented, some DM'd me. I think my husband is part of this too. I recognize that chat layout. He's always on it. I've seen that name, Henrik. Lisette and I met once a week after that, always in public places, always switching locations. We weren't just preparing a digital case. We were preparing each other. For war, for fallout, for anything. One evening, as we sat in a crowded cafe in central Copenhagen, she handed me a flash drive. What's this? Her hand was trembling. Rasmus tried to hide their backups on a shared cloud. I found one file still syncing to our old family computer. I plugged it into my second laptop as soon as I got home. What I found made my skin crawl. Dozens of folders, names I didn't recognize, each labeled with a woman's name. Inside, notes, conversations, private medical records, financial tracking. This wasn't just about us. This was bigger. I stared at the screen, one file open, trembling hands hovering above the keyboard. This was evidence. But more than that, it was power. I didn't sleep that night. I just organized, backed up, labeled everything with dates, patterns, color-coded cross-references, and then I called Felix again. I met him the next afternoon at a bookshop near the university. He hugged me gently, like I might break. I didn't know who else to call, I said. I need someone who doesn't think I've lost my mind. He sat across from me, eyes serious. Camilla, you look like someone preparing for war. I am. He didn't laugh. He just nodded. I handed him a sealed envelope. If anything happens to me, this goes to the press. He opened his mouth to protest, but I stopped him. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being realistic. Felix placed the envelope in his bag and said 5 words I hadn't heard in a long time. I believe you. All of it. And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. The problem with building a weapon is that, eventually, you have to use it. For weeks, I'd been collecting files, documenting timelines, matching voices to transcripts. I had data, names, and a list of women who were slowly realizing they were part of something sinister. But data means nothing if it stays buried. I wasn't ready to go public yet, not without knowing exactly how far these men would go to protect themselves. So I baited them. It started with a message in the group chat, not from me, of course not, but from an anonymous number I created, one tied to a burner phone and VPN. I used a tool to mimic the writing style of one of the group members. The message was simple. Someone's leaking. Saw a screenshot of our folder on Instagram. Who the hell's running their mouth? Within 30 seconds, the group exploded. Victor. What screenshot? Where? Rasmus. This better not be another prank, I swear to God. Henrik, if this is Eric again, I'm out. We agreed no names, no wives, no exposure. Oliver didn't say anything for a full 5 minutes. Then finally, calm down, I'll look into it. I have a suspicion. He meant me. I was sure of it. But that was exactly what I needed, for them to panic. To start pointing fingers. To dig their own holes, faster than I ever could. That night, Oliver was colder, quieter. He kept watching me from the corner of his eye, like I might sprout fangs. I played the perfect wife. I made lasagna. I complimented his shirt. I pretended not to notice the slight tremble in his hands as he poured himself a glass of wine. He was unraveling, and it was only the beginning. Over the next few days, the women I'd quietly connected with began sending me messages. One had installed spyware on her husband's phone. Another had tricked hers into sharing a login by pretending to update their Netflix. The things they found. One woman, Sophia, discovered a spreadsheet titled Divorce Leverage. It had tabs for emotional triggers, financial assets, and even family secrets. Another, Elin, found a recording of her husband mocking her miscarriage in a voice note to the group. I vomited when I heard it. This wasn't just betrayal, it was systematic cruelty. Lisette and I decided it was time. We drafted an anonymous email and sent it to every major media outlet in Europe. Attached were carefully selected files, just enough to cause outrage, but not enough to reveal our full hand. Then we waited. 2 days passed. Nothing. On the third day, it hit. A mid-sized online publication based in The Hague broke the story. The Husband Survival Manual, inside a secret network of manipulative men sharing private data about their wives. It spread like wildfire. By nightfall, 3 national newspapers had picked it up. Hashtags were trending. Women were asking questions. Screenshots began surfacing in other languages: German, Swedish, French, and then my phone lit up. It was Oliver. I didn't answer. He texted, "Come home. We need to talk, now." But I wasn't home. I was in a hotel room registered under a fake name, watching the world finally see what we'd been screaming in silence. I waited until the next morning. Then I called him. "I know what you did," I said. My voice was calm, controlled. He didn't deny it. He didn't cry. He didn't even ask how I knew. All he said was, "You think this changes anything? You think people will care for more than a week?" I let that sit in the air for a moment. Then I replied, "No, that's why I'm not finished yet." I didn't hang up right away. I let the silence stretch between us, like a final thread waiting to snap. Oliver tried again. "Camilla, if you release everything, you'll go down with us. Don't you get it? You knew. You stayed. That makes you complicit." I wanted to laugh, but my mouth wouldn't move. Instead, I said, "You've spent years preparing for the day I'd find out, but you never once prepared for the day I'd fight back." Then I ended the call. That was the last time I ever heard his voice directly. Within 24 hours, the press frenzy escalated. More victims came forward. An investigative journalist named Claudia Reuter reached out via encrypted email. She'd been following the story and wanted to dig deeper. She didn't just want headlines, she wanted names, and I gave them to her. But only the confirmed ones, the ones we double-checked through screenshots, voice recordings, linked accounts. I wasn't going to let innocent men become collateral damage. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. Still, the fallout was immediate. Henrik resigned from his finance firm in Geneva. Eric shut down all social media and deleted his business website, Rasmus. He issued a weak, vague public statement that reeked of legal advice. "I deeply regret any offense caused by my private communications." But Oliver? He stayed silent. Not a word. Not a post. Not a denial. Just silence, which, ironically, spoke louder than anything else. That silence was what made me nervous. Because if he wasn't defending himself, wasn't trying to spin it, it meant he was planning something. And knowing him, it would be quiet, subtle, long-term. I couldn't afford to wait for it. So I escalated. I uploaded the full contents of the Husband Survival Manual's cloud folder, with every identifying detail, to an anonymous European whistleblowing platform, all of it. The medical records, the bank fraud, the fake therapy referrals, even the folder labeled exit plans. That last one was the worst. It detailed how some of them had quietly shifted joint assets into offshore accounts months, sometimes years, before their wives even realized divorce was on the table. They had built their escape routes in advance, leaving us nothing but confusion and shattered credit reports. The reaction to the leak was immediate and vicious. The hashtags turned into protests. Women marched outside offices and court buildings across Berlin, Oslo, Brussels, and Warsaw. Someone created a map showing where confirmed members of the group lived and worked. By the end of the week, 3 lawsuits had already been filed. One woman released a video sobbing as she read aloud from her husband's section in the manual. She had no idea people were capable of this level of manipulation, but I did, because I had lived it. Still, I wasn't ready for what came next. Felix called me one morning, his voice tense. "Camilla, check your email, right now." I opened it. An anonymous tip. Subject: "You missed something." Attached was a single image. It was me, again, taken from a new angle, through a different window, different location, different timestamp, last week. I stared at it, and something inside me cracked. This wasn't just digital anymore. This was real, physical, ongoing. They were still watching me. Even now, I looked around the hotel room, heart pounding. Was there a camera? A tracker? How had they known where I was? I left everything behind, my bag, my coffee, even my laptop, and ran straight to the lobby. Felix met me 10 minutes later and drove me to another hotel under a different name, farther out of the city. "We're going to the police," he said, but I shook my head. "Not yet." He looked at me like I was mad. "They're following you, Camilla." "I know," I said. "And that means they're scared, because men like Oliver don't follow what they're not afraid to lose." I didn't sleep at all that night. I lay on the stiff hotel bed, eyes wide, mind racing. I kept hearing Madeline's voice in my head. Be more dangerous than he is, but quieter. The photo proved one thing. I was getting close, too close. They weren't trying to scare me anymore. They were trying to track me, monitor me, stay a step ahead, the same way they'd always done. But this time, I wasn't the same woman. By morning, I had a plan. Not one driven by panic, but by precision. I started by backtracing the metadata on the photo. With Felix's help, I was able to pull coordinates from the file. It led us to a parking structure across from the cafe I'd visited last Tuesday. They had eyes there. Not just random surveillance, a pattern, a route, a radius. I checked my emails again. One of the other women I'd spoken to, Alina, from Vienna, had sent me a voice message days ago. I hadn't listened to it in the chaos. When I finally did, my blood went cold. Her voice was shaking. "Camilla, I think they followed me. I'm seeing a black car near my street almost every night. I tried reporting it, but nothing happened. I'm scared. What do we do now?" The message was 3 days old. I tried calling her. No answer. I texted. Nothing. Her profile had gone dark. I sat frozen, staring at the screen. Was this how it started? One woman vanishing after another while the rest of us were called dramatic or paranoid? No, I wouldn't let it happen again. I called Madeline. "I need a contact inside the police," I said. "Someone who won't leak. Someone clean." She didn't hesitate. "I have one, but once we do this, we don't get to take it back. I know." She gave me a name, Detective Elodie Maran, based in Strasbourg, working with cross-border domestic abuse and cybercrime cases. I sent her a heavily redacted brief first, just enough to open a case. Within 24 hours, she requested a secure video call. I expected doubt, hesitation, maybe a lecture about going through proper legal channels. What I didn't expect was this. I've seen a case like this before. In Poland, different group, similar behavior, but no one spoke up. It disappeared. I swallowed hard. "This one won't." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "If you can give me access to the raw data, names, locations, financial trails, I can escalate this to Interpol." Finally, someone who understood the scale. I uploaded everything, every file, every folder, every decrypted backup Lisette and I had uncovered. And that's when Elodie said something I'll never forget. "You're not just exposing husbands. You're exposing a system that's been quietly infecting relationships across Europe, and it won't go down without a fight." She wasn't exaggerating, because just 2 days later, the counterattack began. An anonymous article surfaced online, published on a fringe legal site. It claimed the recent leaks were emotionally unstable ex-wives trying to defame their husbands. It painted us as vindictive, manipulative, mentally unwell, and at the end of the article was my full name, Camilla Dahl. No photo, no address, but enough. Enough for the hate to start. Emails, messages, comments calling me a liar, a hysteric, a bitter woman obsessed with ruining men's lives. And yet, I didn't back down. because for every message of hate, there were 5 more from women saying, "I believe you. This happened to me. Please, don't stop." I forwarded the article to LOD. Her response was immediate. "They're getting sloppy. If they're resorting to defamation, it means they're out of moves. That's when people make mistakes." I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready, because the final phase of my plan had already begun, and they had no idea. I called it the Mirror Protocol, a private operation Lisette and I had created in secret. It was simple. For every lie they'd told, we'd reflect it back. For every trap they'd built, we'd set one of our own. No violence, no drama, just exposure. Controlled, strategic, and irreversible. The foundation was already in place. The evidence, the leaks, the media buzz. But now it was time for the final blow. The one they'd never see coming. We started with Henrik. Lisette managed to intercept one of his private logins using a vulnerability we found in their shared drive. From there, we gained access to something we didn't expect. A private Slack channel. Not Messenger, not WhatsApp. Something else. Deeper, quieter, hidden. Inside, there were only 4 members. Henrik Oliver Victor, and someone listed as AM. It took us 2 days to figure out who AM was. Anton Meyer, a corporate attorney in Zurich. Untouchable. No online presence. But listed as strategic counsel in dozens of small firms across Europe. He wasn't just advising them, he was protecting them. I forwarded everything to Detective Elodie. Her reply was brief, almost clinical. "Congratulations, you just cracked the upper layer of the network. This goes far beyond domestic manipulation." She requested an emergency task force review. Suddenly, I was no longer a whistleblower. I was a key witness. Lisette and I were moved to a secure location under new aliases. Phones confiscated, no internet access, just a room with neutral walls and the ticking sound of time finally catching up to them. But Oliver wasn't done. While I was offline, he made his move. An anonymous blog post appeared with photos of me, some real, some altered. The article called me a professional fraudster, accused me of blackmailing multiple men across Europe for financial gain, claimed I had a history of psychiatric hospitalization in Spain. I didn't even need to check. I knew he used my own past against me. Twisted truths, half-memories, things I told him in confidence. But what he didn't know was that I was prepared. Because 1 week before, I had sat in front of a camera and told my entire story. Every detail, every document, every tactic they used. We recorded for 6 hours. Claudia, the journalist, had the footage. She promised to only release it if something like this ever happened. 3 hours after the blog post went live, the video dropped. The Husband Manual, Inside the Secret Network Built to Break Women, a confession by Camilla Dahl. It was raw, unfiltered. I cried twice. I paused often, but I told everything: the surveillance, the gaslighting, the digital trails, the contingency plans, and people listened. Not just online, not just victims, politicians, lawmakers, police departments, European human rights groups. Within 48 hours, the fallout began. Henrik was arrested for data privacy violations and unlawful surveillance. Victor was suspended pending investigation. Rasmus fled the country. Anton Meyer's firm was raided by Swiss authorities. And Oliver? He issued a statement, a pathetic, calculated statement. "I loved my wife. I never intended harm. I was misled by a group of men I trusted. A group. Not a cult he helped lead, not a system he helped create. But that was his last mistake. Because by then, Interpol had issued international warrants. Evidence was mounting of cross-border fraud, digital abuse, and conspiracy. The Husband Survival Manual wasn't a private joke anymore. It was officially recognized as an organized digital abuse ring. And me? I wasn't a victim anymore. I was their reckoning. The day Oliver was arrested, I didn't feel what I thought I would. No triumph, no justice, no satisfying rush of revenge. I just felt quiet, like I'd finally stepped out of a burning house and realized how long I'd been holding my breath. It happened at dawn. The French authorities coordinated with Danish police. He was taken from our home, my former home, without resistance. The footage made the news. Him in a gray hoodie, head down, jaw tight. No words, no apologies, just silence. By midday, my name was trending again, but this time, the comments were different. Strangers were calling me brave. Survivors were calling me sister. Lawyers, psychologists, even MPs across Europe were calling for reform. But all I could think about was Alina. Still no word, no trace, no signal. It haunted me. I called Elodie, desperate for news. She said they were working on a lead, that someone using Alina's ID had crossed into Croatia weeks ago, but the trail was thin. It could be her. It could be someone else using her identity. She might have vanished on purpose, Elodie said gently. Some people don't want justice. They just want to disappear. I understood, but I couldn't accept it, so while the world was finally reacting to what we'd uncovered, I kept digging. Just me, Lisette, and Felix, still connected through encrypted messages, still refusing to rest. Lisette had started speaking publicly, too. Her interviews were sharper than mine, colder, angrier. She'd been quiet for too long, and now her voice carried weight. One line from her first speech stayed with me. They built a manual to control us, so we wrote one to destroy them. The press ate it up. Women quoted it, turned it into art, stickers, protest banners. Suddenly, the Mirror Protocol wasn't just our secret strategy. It had become a movement. Across Europe, women began organizing their own investigations. Facebook groups popped up overnight, filled with people sharing patterns, collecting names, comparing messages, a network of digital survivors, refusing to be quiet anymore. And then, something happened that changed everything. A new folder was anonymously uploaded to the whistleblowing platform, titled Backup Wife List Finn. Inside were over 200 names, first names, last names, cities, ages, notes beside each. She cries when criticized. Wants kids badly. Dad is rich. Leverage? Talks to therapist. Careful. It was a database. A literal shopping list of vulnerable women. Some had never even dated the men involved. They were targets in advance. Candidates for future relationships. We had only scratched the surface. This wasn't just a network of bad husbands anymore. This was organized predation. Elodie launched an immediate task force. The EU Parliament announced an emergency summit on digital abuse and data misuse in personal relationships. Suddenly, the term intimate surveillance rings became a part of official reports. And yet, in the midst of all this chaos, all this attention, I found myself alone in a hotel bathroom, staring at my reflection and feeling nothing. I should have felt powerful, whole, redeemed. But all I saw was a woman who had spent years being watched, manipulated, lied to, used. The truth was out there now. The system was burning, but I was still healing in silence. Felix called me that night. He didn't say much, just asked if I needed air. We met near the waterfront in Marseille. It was quiet, cold, and beautifully anonymous. I hadn't seen him in person in weeks. He looked tired, but safe, like someone who still believed the world could be better, even after everything. We sat on a bench for a long time before I asked, "Do you think we really stopped it?" He took a deep breath. "No," he said. "But we made it visible, and sometimes that's the most dangerous thing of all." The arrests continued for weeks. By the end of the second month, 12 men had been detained in 5 different countries. Charges ranged from digital surveillance and identity theft to financial fraud and conspiracy to psychologically harm their partners. Still, the core question lingered. How many more were out there? Because for every name we confirmed, another 3 surfaced in whispers, in screenshots, in half-deleted comments, in stories too painful to verify. It was like cutting off the head of a hydra. You never knew how many would grow back. But something had changed. Women weren't afraid anymore. They were angry, united, loud. Lisette had started a foundation, Echoes of Her, dedicated to supporting survivors of emotional and digital abuse. Within weeks, it was flooded with messages, hundreds of stories, from women who had once doubted their own memories, their own worth, their own sanity. And yet, in the eye of that storm, I kept thinking about Alina. Still no word. Still no face in the news. Just that voice message, just the fear in her silence. I went back to her last known post, a photo of a seaside trail in Split. I stared at it for hours, hoping for something, anything, a clue, a shadow, a reflection. Then I saw it, a graffiti tag in the corner of the frame, faded but legible. "Free the manual." It was the same phrase used by a group of female activists in Croatia who had launched their own local campaign after our story went global. They had been spray painting the phrase across government buildings, metro stations, and even courthouses. That meant Alina had seen it, or maybe she had written it. I sent the photo to Elodie. She agreed. It was likely recent, maybe only days before Alina vanished. It gave me just enough hope to keep moving. The next blow came from somewhere I never expected. Anton Meyer's office leaked. Not officially. No one claimed responsibility. But suddenly, hundreds of encrypted emails were made public. Messages between lawyers, bankers, and, most disturbingly, psychologists. Some of the men had consulted professionals not for help, but for strategy. How to talk, how to cry on cue, what words made women feel guilt fastest. There were phrases underlined in bold. Use past traumas to shift focus. Express regret but avoid specifics. Praise her strength before isolating her. It was all there. Typed out in cold, emotionless language. This wasn't accidental cruelty. This was engineered. Claudia, the journalist, published an exposé titled Gaslight Science, the Industry Behind Emotional Control. It went viral in under 6 hours. Suddenly, everyone was talking about emotional programming, abuse scripting, weaponized therapy language. But for me, it wasn't theory. It was personal, because I remembered all the moments Oliver used those exact phrases. I remembered the "I'm proud of how strong you are" just before he twisted a knife into my guilt. The "you always overreact to things like this" when I cried about something he pretended hadn't happened. He wasn't improvising. He was reading a script. And now, the whole world could see it. But just as the momentum peaked, just as we felt the shift of power fully leaning toward us, something happened that pulled the ground from beneath me. Lisette called. She was crying. "I think I've been hacked," she whispered. "My files, Camilla, they're gone. All of them." I froze. "How?" I asked, voice sharp. "I don't know. I didn't click anything. But my laptop shut down last night, and when I opened it today, blank. Like it never existed. I checked mine. Still safe. But we both knew what this meant. Someone was still inside. Still watching. Still moving pieces while the world watched the fire. And then I got the message. No name. No number. Just a single line. "You started this. Let's see if you can finish it." The message wasn't a threat. It was a challenge. That's how they saw it. Not as justice catching up to them. Not as consequences. But as a game. One last attempt to flip the board, even if the pieces were already falling. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed one word back. Try. Within hours, my encrypted storage was attacked. First, my backup files disappeared. Then, the cloud links I'd sent to Elodie stopped responding. Even the whistleblower site that hosted our first leak went down for technical maintenance. It was coordinated, controlled, and terrifying. Lisette and I met at a safe house outside Geneva that night. She looked pale, furious, exhausted. There were shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there a week ago. "They're going underground," she said. "Destroying evidence, going dark. You saw what they did to the platforms." I nodded. "This is the real them. Not the men in suits, not the quiet husbands. This." They were cornered, which made them dangerous. And then, a break. Felix called with news. Someone had emailed him. An anonymous tip, encrypted, signed only with the initials AK. The subject line, "Alina isn't gone. She's in hiding, and she's ready." I felt my chest seize. We opened the attachment, a voice note, dated 2 days ago. "Camilla, if you're hearing this, it means you didn't stop." Good, I didn't either. It was her. "I've been watching from the outside. They think I'm broken, but I was buying time. I have my own copies. Things you don't have. Things they never meant anyone to see. But I won't send it yet. I need your word. That when this ends, it ends publicly. No hush settlements, no backdoor deals. They go down in the light." Felix looked at me. "Can you promise her that?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." We replied with a secure file drop, a way for her to upload what she had directly to Elodie's task force. She responded with a location, a small library in Split, 4 p.m. Thursday. One person, no phones. I was on the first train out. I barely slept on the journey. The window beside me blurred with rain and reflections of faces I didn't trust. My heart pounded the entire way, my mind filled with every scenario: ambush, betrayal, surveillance. But when I arrived, she was there, sitting by the window, hair shorter than before, thinner, but unmistakably Alina. When our eyes met, she didn't smile. She just said, "You're late." I sat across from her. "You disappeared," she shrugged. "I had to. Rasmus was watching my sister's apartment. I went quiet." Then she reached into her coat and handed me a flash drive. I copied it before he found out. Everything. Messages, offshore account routing, names, some of them. They're not just businessmen. One of them worked for a digital defense contractor. My stomach dropped. "This was never about love," she whispered. "It was about control, and once they learn how to break a woman, they just apply it to everything." I took the drive. "You trust me to release this? I trust you to destroy them." We didn't hug. We didn't cry. There wasn't time for sentiment. She walked out of the library and disappeared into the noise of the street. By morning, I'd handed the drive to Elodie's team, and within 48 hours it happened. The manual was linked to a private cybersecurity firm, the same one that had received contracts from at least 2 European governments. The rabbit hole was deeper than we ever imagined. But now we had the shovel. The fallout from Alina's flash drive was nuclear. Elodie's team spent 2 sleepless nights cross-checking documents, verifying financial trails, decrypting hidden communication threads that tied the husband survival manual to a web far beyond abusive marriages. This wasn't just a toxic boys' club anymore. This was infrastructure. We learned the firm in question, Halcyon Systems based in Luxembourg, had quietly developed behavior-predicting algorithms using intimate data, not for marketing, not for commerce, for manipulation, emotional triggers, psychological thresholds, relationship fatigue points, all calculated through metadata scraped from years of private messages, voice recordings, and phone habits shared among the group. Oliver had once joked in the chat, "I know her better than she knows herself." He wasn't joking. He was quoting a metric. According to the documents Alina handed over, some of the men were part of a pilot program, voluntary contributors to a behavioral study disguised as marital counseling research. In exchange, they got early access to emotional mapping tools and financial perks through discrete investment channels. They sold us, our patterns, our breakdowns, our silence, and used the profit to build their escape routes. The EU opened an immediate investigation into Halcyon. The French Parliament requested Elodie's task force to testify. For the first time, psychological abuse and tech-enabled coercion were listed on the draft bill for criminal classification. And through it all, Oliver said nothing. No more statements, no more lawyers, just silence. He was being held in an isolated detention center, awaiting trial. According to Elodie, he'd refused to cooperate. He knew what was coming. And for once, he was the one with no script to follow. But for me, the war wasn't over. Because as the media turned its attention to the scandal, as protests grew outside Halcyon's offices, a part of me was still in that kitchen, the one where I'd first found the group chat by accident, the one where I stood, frozen, reading about a contingency plan for me. I'd won the battle. But I hadn't healed the wounds. Felix could tell. He visited me in Brussels, where I'd been staying temporarily under witness protection. He brought coffee and pastries and tried not to look worried when he saw how thin I'd gotten. "You look like you haven't slept in days," he said. "I haven't," I admitted. He was quiet, then added, "You know, you don't have to carry it all." "I do," I said, "because they made us feel like we couldn't, and now that we can, I have to." He didn't argue. Instead, he handed me a piece of paper. "What's this?" "An invitation," he said, "to speak. At a summit in Vienna next month. They want you to tell your story, not the scandal. Yours." I held the paper, hands trembling. Part of me wanted to burn it, hide again, vanish like Alina had tried to do. But another part, the part that had survived everything, whispered, "This is why you're still standing." So I said yes, and a week later I found myself on a plane to Vienna, staring out the window at the clouds, thinking of every woman who had reached out, every anonymous message, every desperate DM that started with, "I think I'm going crazy." I thought of Sophia, of Elin, of Lisette, and of the version of myself who used to second-guess everything, who thought love and surveillance were the same thing if it came from a place of care. I would speak for her. And for everyone who hadn't made it to the microphone. The summit hall in Vienna was nothing like I imagined. There were no cameras flashing in my face, no dramatic music or thunderous applause, just a quiet, respectful crowd. Survivors, psychologists, lawmakers, tech experts. Some wore ribbons, some wore nothing but tired expressions and haunted eyes, but every single one of them knew. They knew what it was like to be disbelieved, to be dismissed, to be told they were overreacting when in fact they were drowning. I walked to the podium in silence. No notes, no script. I wasn't here to perform. I was here to remember. I wasn't supposed to be here, I began. My voice was shaky, but I didn't care. I was supposed to stay quiet, to cry in private, to forgive and forget and blame myself for everything. I looked around. No one blinked. But one day, I opened a group chat, and in that chat, I found my name. Not in a message of love, not in a plan for a surprise or a gift. I found my name under a list titled Triggers, Murmurs filled the room. I continued. And that's when I realized I wasn't living with a man. I was living with a strategy. I told them about the husband survival manual, about the folders, the contingency plans, the surveillance, the erasure of who I was, piece by piece, disguised as devotion. But then I told them something else. Surviving wasn't the hard part, I said. The hard part was being believed. The hard part was convincing the world that emotional abuse is real, even when it leaves no bruises. I paused. And that's why we're here. Not to tell sob stories, but to dismantle the systems that made them possible. When I stepped down from the podium, the applause wasn't loud. It was steady. Real. I saw women wiping tears from their cheeks. I saw men bowing their heads in quiet shame. But most of all, I saw hope. After the summit, Lisette and I met at a quiet cafe near the river. She was glowing in a way I hadn't seen before. You did it, she whispered, raising her glass. We did it, I corrected. She smiled. The manual is officially banned from being referenced in public platforms. They're rewriting cyber abuse laws in 4 countries because of what you exposed. I blinked, not because I didn't believe her, but because it finally felt real. I had spent so long fighting shadows I forgot what sunlight looked like. And yet, even in that moment of victory, I knew something. There would be more women, more systems, more manuals written in dark corners of the internet by men who think silence is the same as permission. But now they know. Someone is watching. And this time, it's not them. That night, back at the hotel, I opened my laptop and began typing again. Not for the court, not for the press, for her. The next woman. The one who'll feel that something is wrong, but won't know why. I started the file with the same words I'd written months ago. If you're reading this, it's because your husband has a secret manual about how to break you. And below that, I added, but this time he won't finish it. The email came 6 weeks later. No subject, no signature, just a single sentence. Thank you for giving me a way out. There was no name attached, but I didn't need one. I'd seen enough messages like that by now to know exactly what it meant. Somewhere out there, another woman had read the story. Maybe in a headline, maybe in a hidden thread, maybe in a desperate midnight scroll through a subreddit with shaking hands. And instead of doubting herself, she had listened, and she had left. That was all I needed. Not apologies, not closure, not even justice, just the knowledge that the silence was breaking, and that I had played even a small part in cracking it open. Lisette's foundation had expanded. She was working with advocacy groups in 8 countries now. Felix had started helping men speak out about their own experiences with manipulation. Because yes, it happened to them too. And Alina? She was free. She hadn't gone back to Vienna or posted anything public, but she messaged me now and then, little updates. I'm learning how to sleep again. I took a train without telling anyone. It felt good. I smiled today, and it wasn't fake. I saved every message. As for me, I stayed in Brussels a little longer. I needed space, not just from Oliver or the past, but from the version of me who had survived all of it. She was strong, but I didn't want to be her anymore. I wanted to laugh without scanning the room first, to trust my own memory without double-checking it, to love, maybe one day, without waiting for the lie. One evening, as I walked along the canal, my phone buzzed. It was a voice note from Claudia, the journalist. I hit play. They've shut down Halcyon, fully. New legislation is being pushed across the EU. Some are calling it the Camilla Act. I thought you should know. I stopped walking. I stood there, in the orange twilight, listening to the city breathe. Not because I needed the credit, not because I wanted recognition, but because I had once been told I was too emotional to ever be taken seriously. And now, my name was being used to protect people. I went home, sat at my desk, and opened the file one last time. The Mirror Protocol. The folder was full now, with testimonies, resources, links, evidence, and a guide for how to fight back. Not with violence, but with truth. I compressed it into one final file, and I sent it to 5 journalists, to 10 lawyers, to 50 women who had asked for it. No strings attached, no hidden demands, just this. Use it. Rewrite the ending. Then I closed the laptop, and I slept for 12 hours straight. For the first time in years. No nightmares, no fear, no manual being written about how to break me, because that manual had been burned. And from the ashes, we wrote something new.